Yeah, hello everyone and welcome back. So today we are going to see a different approach to share data from one component to another component in Angular, and these components are not directly related by parent-child relationship. So earlier we already discussed the four approaches to transfer data from one component to another component in Angular, and they are like first approach we discuss to transfer data from parent to a child using input decorator. Then we discuss transfer data from child to parent using at the rate output decorator and the event emitter. And then third approach we discuss to share data between unrelated component by the help of service class. And the fourth approach we discuss to share data from child to parent via the use of view component reference variable. So these are the four approaches we discuss, and these four approaches are highly used in the Angular live application where always there is a requirement to send data from the different components. So we need to see first what is the relationship between them, and then we have to use accordingly. So guys, I will suggest if you have not watched these lectures, then you can visit the previous lecture and then you can have a look regarding this like concepts. So today I am going to share one more thing about the fifth approach, and this is very important and useful approach to share data from one component to the different component. Basically, with this approach, we can share data from one component to a multiple components. Let's say there is a component A and a component B. So if you want data from component A to a B, okay, or you want to send data from A to B and to C also, then this approach will be very helpful. And basically in a live time when there is any change in the data, then those data will get sent from one component to the multiple components at a real time. So this approach is known as subject observer pattern, or also known as publish subscribe pattern. So this is known as subject observer pattern because here we are use subject and the observer to share the data or to emit the data, and the receiver will like receive the data. So it is kind of a publish or subscribe pattern. So here we will use the subscription. So whoever will subscribe this, they will get the data. Okay, yeah. So like we are going to see this with a proper example by doing the coding and all in Angular project. But now let's yeah, so now let's understand the concept or the theory part of it. So for this we are going to use a subject class, and also we are going to use the observer, and also we are going to take the help of a service component. So basically we cannot directly share from one component to the different component, but we have to take the help of a service class, right? So service component is kind of a centralized place to manage data communication between component, using subject for sending the data and the observer for receiving the data. So here we use subject class for sending the data and the observer for receiving the data. So basically service point is kind of a singleton class which like only one object for is created for the whole application, and then we use this service to share the data to the different component or to the multiple components, right? Yeah. So now let's see how we can implement this. So for this we have to uh, yeah, so we need to create two component. So for now I will show you to transfer data from between the two component, but you can also use this to share data among the multiple component. Okay, so we have a components folder already. Now let's go to this component folder. Inside source we have app, and then we have components folder. Inside this folder I'm going to create one component with the name sender. Okay, so basically from sender component I will send the data. Okay, and then I will create one more component, that is a receiver component. So basically that receiver component is going to receive the data. So this is my receiver component which is going to receive the data in this example. Yeah, so these two component I just created. Sorry, by mistake I put a different yeah. So ng generate and then component receiver component. So this will create another component with the name receiver component. So you can see yeah, so these two component are getting created in my application. This is sender component and this is receiver component, right? So mostly we will focus in this only, but we cannot send the data from sender component to a receiver component. We have to take the help of the service class. So in the service folder we already have one service with the name global service.ts. Okay, we are going to take the help of this service class to send the data. Okay, so let's see. And yeah, and like let's understand very like deep manner how we can do this. Yeah, so you have to listen like very carefully and you have to see that what approach we need to do to achieve this. So the sender component is mean to send the data. Okay, so let me create one button. So with a button click I want to send this data. Let's say button name as send data. So let me put one click event, so that with the click event I will call one method, let's say send data. So this send data I need to create inside my sender component. All right. So now we need to take the help of service class, right? So we will use global service itself. So I need to inject this service class inside the sender component. So let me create a constructor. So in the constructor parameter, we need to inject this global service, and this global service with a small g is my reference variable. So let me import this global service. Okay, so with this the help of reference variable I'm going to, yeah, so first of all we need to create one method inside this global service which is going to store this data. Let's say send data something. Okay, and this data is of, let's say, so this data we will receive here, right? So this is the global service. In the inside that I created one send data method. Now let's go to the sender component, and here I need to call this send data method of a global service with the help of this global service reference variable send data. All right, so let's say you are sending some data. Okay, let's say you want to send the data, let's say data of a string type, and here you want to send sending from sender component. All right, so this is the message I want to pass from sender component to a receiver component. So this dot data. All right, yeah, so this data I just want to pass. Yeah, so this data I want to pass, so to the service class sent data. Here I pass and this data will receive this data, right? And here now I need to create the subject variable. So this is the global service. So inside the service class you need to create a subject class. Okay, instance. Let's say data subject is my variable name, new subject. Okay, and this subject here I need to pass the generic as any. So this is the instance of a subject. Okay, so this data subject is a reference variable of subject class, and here we will pass this. Okay, so this dot data subject dot next. So this is going to emit this data. Okay, so this is going to emit this data. So whenever we will call a send data from a sender component, then there, with the variable reference variable of type subject, we have a next method which is going to emit this data. Okay, and then here, okay, and then here let's create one more variable basically. So here we need to create this as an observer. So this dot data subject dot as observer. Okay, so as observer is a method. Basically it is of the observer type. So this data dollar is an observer type. So whenever we will call the send data, then it will do data subject dot next. Data subject is of reference variable of subject class instance, and then this data variable is an observer type. So whoever will subscribe this variable, and if there is any change in here, then it will send these data to that subscribe portion. All right. Yeah, so this is the implementation we need to do in the service class. Now let's move to the sender. Yeah, so from here let's check everything we have done. Yes, now let's see in the receiver portion. Okay, so this is my like receiver class. So in the receiver class, I need to create one receive data, let's say receive data variable. All right, and also I need to create the constructor. Let me create the constructor first. So basically, where we have to receive this data, in the constructor part, we need to subscribe this. So let's say data dot yeah, so we need to subscribe. For that I need to inject this global service again to this receiver service only. So this is the, so let inject global service. Let's import this. All right, so with this global service, let me call the data dollar and let me subscribe it. Okay, so we are subscribing this data dollar variable which is present inside service class, and whoever will subscribe this, if there is any change in that variable, then that variable will emit the data and the subscribe will receive it. So we will receive in the data here, and this dot receive data. So I will store whatever it will captured here, I will store into the received data. So by this manner we will able to get the data sent from the send component to a receiver component. All right. Yeah, so I hope this is clear to you how the flow is there. Right. And let me store this to we can store this. Oh yeah, so actually let me store this because here we are using subscription. So when, so also we need to destroy the subscription, otherwise there may be the memory leakage problem. Always we should follow this. So yeah, so let me create one variable subscription. Subscription of type subscription. So this like subscription is coming from, let's put sub. Yeah, so this like subscription is from the rxjs package. Okay, and this subscription we need to like yeah, so in the ng like destroy we need to like unsubscribe this, otherwise there may be chance that there will be the memory leakage. Okay, So for that, let me put the destroy method also. So this is ng on destroy, is basically a lifecycle method which get called before the component get destroyed. Okay, so for this we need to implement one interface, that is on destroy. Okay, so this method and this ng on destroy we have to override, and then we need to use this dot sub dot unsubscribe. So this is the unsubscribe method of the subscription class, and this we need to do like whenever we do any subscription, then we need to unsubscribe this into the destroy method. Otherwise there may be chance that you will face like memory leakage. Yeah, and here comes like one of the important question maybe arrive in your Angular interview, that there they may ask that what are the process you should follow in your Angular application to check about the memory and your so you should mention that whenever we are using subscribe in that class, always use ng on destroy method, the lifecycle method, and in that always do unsubscribe. So when your component will get destroy, then this unsubscribe will subscribe, because see, here we are doing subscribe. So subscribe we did means for lifetime it will be subscribe. So maybe chance your component get destroyed, still this variable is in the subscribe portion, so it will always try to get the data. So there may be chance in your application there will be huge services which will get subscribed, so there may be chance that the memory leakage will be there, right? So always follow this approach, always try to unsubscribe when you are using destroy method. Yeah, so this is the approach, and now you can use this receive data to display in the HTML. Okay, so after receiver component I will use interpolation to display the content of this. So first of all we need to call this method sender method. Okay, let me use the selector of this in my app component.html. Yeah, so from the app component it will load the sender component, and the sender component will have this one button, send button. Okay, so let me run this and let's see how it looks. Ng serve. So yeah, so this is the approach you need to write to send data from one component to another component with the help of service class. And in the service class you need to create the object of this subject, and then this subject you have to put as an observer, and this variable whoever will subscribe this. So there may be chance that the multiple component will subscribe this variable as we have done here in the receiver, and the subscription can be done inside constructor. Okay, you need to remember. And in the constructor, when the component load, it will simply subscribe this, and whenever there is a change in the data, always it will send the data, and it will read this, and then here it will send, and then this will store into the received data, right? So let's go to the browser and let's see. Yeah, you see, it loaded the sender component, and in the sender component we have seen that we have a button. Now if I click this button, then it will call a send data method here, and then it will call a send data method of a subscribe of a service class, and this will send the data whatever we want to pass, and then it will do a next. So data subject is the reference variable of subject class. It will doing next, it will emit this data, and this data subject is also the observer of, and this is a variable. Okay, so whoever will subscribe this, so in the in the receiver component we have subscribed this inside constructor, then they will receive this data, and then we can use this data received data to put any logic. For now I am just displaying in my HTML. So if I click this, okay, I clicked but nothing happened. Let me see why. Did I miss anything? Okay, send data. subscribe data, receive data. Okay, and this receive date. Okay, so what I did, actually I'm not loading this receiver component. Okay, so this is the receiver component selector. Let me load this. Okay, so in this example I will load inside the sender component only, but there may be chance that you have to load into the like any portion of your application, but currently I will load it here just after this button. Okay, so yeah, I will load this to the HTML. So like this it will get loaded. Now let's go again. Yeah, you see, so whenever I send, you see it says first. Okay, so let me show it again. So I rephrased it. It's so yeah, first button is like coming from the sender, and then we have a receiver component loaded. Receiver component works. Now if I click on the send data, then it is sending the data to the receiver, and then it is showing sending from sender component, right? Because here we are using interpolation, right? Yeah. So this is the way by which we can send data from one component to the multiple components in a real time by using the subject class, observer, and the service class. Yeah. So let's discuss some of the important points regarding this. So the important point is that here we are using observer nature. So subject is both an observable and observer. It can emit values, next data. So with the next method, we are passing the data and to be subscribed to get the data. So here in the get data we are using dollar data dollar, or you can use the get yeah, and also you can use the get method. So here we're using the subscription. Basically, component or service that want to receive the emitted data should be subscribed to get the data. It is important to unsubscribe from the absorber to prevent memory leak, typically done in the ng on it destroy lifecycle hook. These all things we have seen. And there is one more concept, multicasting. Basically, subject allow multicasting, meaning it broadcasts the same data to a multiple subscriber. It means that if there are multiple component who are subscribing that data dollar values, then all those component will also receive the same value. This make it useful for scenarios where multiple part of your application need to react to the same event or data change, then they will receive those data, right? Yeah, so this is all about this. Yeah, so see you in the next lecture.